Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be exploring the intro to pure consciousness, taking on the way inside. You shared this with us, so I guess you're interested in self-discovery and all that. Like, what's happening in your inner world?
Yeah. And it's really cool how the author sets it all up. They talk about these inner tools to kind of describe our mental faculties. So it's like we're going on a journey inward, exploring consciousness that way.
I love that bit about the cicadas. It's like our minds can be so loud, just buzzing constantly, like those insects.
Hmm.
But the author seems to think we can learn to quiet them down. With practice, I guess.
Right. It's a great analogy because it's not just that thoughts are so overwhelming, it's that they have potential too. Like a cicada song can be annoying, but also kind of beautiful. It all depends how you listen to it. Our thoughts can be shaped too,
Yeah.
refined.
Okay, so let's get into what the author's really trying to say here. It seems like they're saying there's another way to feel good inside,
Yeah.
besides just chasing success and all that external stuff, right?
Exactly. They're saying that achievements and hobbies, even education, those are all important.
hmm
But they're mostly about the outside world. So you might be really successful out there, but still not know how to handle what's going on inside?
It's like we spend our whole lives trying to figure out the outside world, but then when we look
Mhm.
inside, it's like this, I don't know, this huge empty space.
Yeah, and they even talk about how the internet makes it worse. All that information just bombarding us all the time, like adding fuel to the fire
Yeah.
when our minds are already so noisy.
So what's the alternative? The author keeps mentioning these inner tools, but what are they exactly?
Right. Well, they talk about four of them: the rational mind, imagination,
Yeah.
intuition, and inner sensitivity.
Yeah.
And they say everyone has these tools, but we develop them to different degrees. Like some people are more in touch with their intuition.
So, okay, let's break those down a bit. Rational mind. I kind of get that one. It's,
Yeah.
it's just our ability to think logically, like solve problems, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but it's not just for figuring out the outside world, right? The author's saying we got to apply that same logic to our inner world too, our thoughts and emotions.
And then there's imagination, not just like seeing things in your mind, but also sounds,
Yeah.
like creating whole soundscapes.
Exactly. And the author thinks imagination is super powerful for exploring our inner world and maybe even changing it?
Yeah, intuition, that's that gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
But how do we actually cultivate that? Like learn to trust it?
It's that feeling you get that goes beyond logic, like a whisper you have to learn how to listen to. It comes through feelings, not like big, obvious signs. Have you ever just had a feeling about something and it turned out to be right, even though it didn't make sense at the time?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes I just get this strong sense about a decision, even if I can't explain it. And more often than not, it works out.
See? That's intuition. And the author says we can get better at it by paying attention to those little nudges, those feelings.
Okay, and then the last one, inner sensitivity. That one feels a bit more, I don't know, complex.
Yeah, it's about being aware of subtle changes inside. Not just your thoughts and emotions, but even what you're feeling in your body. It's like being super tuned in to what's going on inside.
So instead of getting swept away by everything, we're more present, more aware of what's happening in our inner world.
Exactly. And the author thinks that's key to understanding how our inner world works and how it affects our experience of the outside world.
You know what this reminds me of? It's like inner gymnastics or something. We train our bodies, right? Why not train our minds and emotions the same way?
I love that. That's a great way to put it. It's like going to the gym for your mind to make it stronger and more flexible.
And they're even saying that inner sensitivity and intuition, those are often the least developed, but they have the most potential for growth.
Mm.
So maybe this intro is just the beginning, the start of a much bigger journey of exploring these tools. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's like they're laying the groundwork, getting us ready to unlock the potential of these tools, to really dive deep.
All right, so as we go further with pure consciousness, I want you to think about which of these inner tools really speaks to you.
Yeah, think about which one you want to strengthen. Like, what's one small step you could take today to flex those inner muscles?
That's something to think about as we keep going with this deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into the introduction of pure consciousness. We've already talked about the author's main argument and all those inner tools. Now I want to know how we actually use them.
Yeah, well, one thing they talk about is how to deal with all the thoughts. Like, how do we deal with that constant chatter? It can be so distracting, even kind of stressful?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like having a radio on in the background and it's stuck on a station you hate. How do we change the channel?
Right. Well, the author has some ideas about how to transform those thoughts, like take those negative or unproductive thoughts and turn them into something healthier. One technique that I thought was really interesting was called refreshing the brain. It's for when you wake up feeling all foggy, like you can't think straight.
Oh, I know those days. Tell me about this brain refresh thing. How does it work?
Well, it's like a visualization. You picture your brain as a sphere, and it's filled with this bright blue light, all sparkly.
Okay, yeah, I can kind of see that. Sounds pretty.
And then you imagine movement inside that sphere, like a swirling liquid, like you're stirring up the energy in your brain.
I can see how that might make you feel more energized,
Yeah,
more clear-headed.
exactly. And the key is to believe that you can actually change your brain, like the activity of your brain cells.
So it's not just about seeing the image, it's about believing in your own power to change your mind.
Right. And what's really cool is that even if you don't believe it at first, the more you do this visualization, the more you might start to believe it.
Right.
That can actually lead to a more positive mental state.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but for your brain.
Hmm.
I like it.
There's another technique that I found really helpful. It's called transformation of the thought flow. Have you ever had that experience where your thoughts are just spiraling, like they're taking you down a rabbit hole you don't want to go down?
Oh, all the time. My thoughts can feel like a runaway train sometimes.
Well, this technique is about taking back control of those thoughts, like consciously changing them to be more positive.
That sounds hard. I mean, how do you control something that feels so automatic?
It is hard, but the author gives you a way to do it, step by step. First, you got to become more aware of your thoughts, like notice them as they come up.
So it's like you become an observer. You're watching the thoughts, but you're not getting caught up in them.
Right. And once you can do that, you can start to pick out the thoughts that are causing you problems, the ones that are making you feel bad or holding you back.
So it's not about getting rid of all thoughts. It's about choosing which ones to focus on.
Yeah. And the author makes this really interesting point. They say that even negative thoughts usually have a good intention behind them, like a positive root.
Oh, interesting. So it's not that the negative thoughts are bad. It's that they're trying to tell us something.
Exactly. And once you figure out that positive intention, you can start to challenge the negative thought, like find the opposite thought. So if you're thinking, I'm not good enough, maybe the opposite is I am good enough. And then you can find something in between, something more balanced, like I have strengths and weaknesses, and I'm learning all the time.
So it's like going from black and white to color. You're seeing the whole picture, not just the negative part.
Yeah, exactly. And the more you do this, the more you can actually change your thought patterns, and that can make your inner world a lot more positive.
It sounds like it takes work, but it can also be really powerful, right? Like you can actually change your reality by changing your thoughts.
Absolutely. And that idea of shaping your reality, that comes up again in the section on consciousness beyond thoughts.
Ooh, yeah, that part was really interesting. It's like they're saying there's this whole other level of consciousness,
Mhm.
deeper than all the thoughts we usually have.
Right, like there's this awareness that's always there, but we don't always notice it because our thoughts are so loud.
It's like there's this calm, quiet space underneath all the chaos.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
a good way to put it. And they give you techniques to access this deeper consciousness, like meditation and mindfulness.
Yeah, those things that help you quiet your mind so you can hear that deeper awareness.
Exactly. And once you've experienced that deeper consciousness, the author says you can start to live more from that place instead of being caught up in all the thoughts.
That sounds amazing, to be free from all that mental chatter. But I bet it takes a lot of practice.
It does, yeah. The author says it's an ongoing process. You have to keep coming back to that quiet space, even when life gets crazy. It's like learning to surf. You got to learn to ride the waves instead of getting knocked over by them.
That's a great analogy. Learning to ride the waves of your thoughts instead of letting them control you.
There's one more thing I wanted to mention before we move on. It's something the author says about using these inner practices in a healthy way.
Okay, what's that?
They're really clear that these techniques are not about manipulating other people or causing harm.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Just because you're developing these powerful tools doesn't mean you should use them for bad stuff.
Right, it's like having superpowers. You got to use them responsibly. For good, not evil.
Like Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly. And even though exploring our inner world is a personal thing, it's also connected to other people. Like, our own well-being is tied to the well-being of everyone else.
So it's not about just ignoring the world and focusing on ourselves. It's about using what we learn to make the world a better place.
Yeah. And that idea of being connected, it comes up even more in the next section we're going to talk about. Complete trust in reality, or surrender to the infinite and all-pervasive consciousness.
Ooh, okay, now we're getting into the really deep stuff.
Yeah.
This is where they talk about universal consciousness, right?
Right. And that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into pure consciousness. We've talked about all sorts of things like those inner tools and how to change your thoughts. But now let's get into that universal consciousness idea. That part really got me thinking.
It is pretty mind-blowing, right? It's like the author's saying there's this energy that connects everything in the universe,
hmm
and we're all part of it, even if we don't realize it.
So we're not just connected to other people, but to everything, like trees and stars and everything.
Yeah, that's the idea. And the author says if we can surrender to this universal consciousness, if we can trust it, then we can find real peace, even when things are tough.
That word surrender, it's kind of weird, right? It sounds like giving up. But
Mm.
you're saying it's more about trust.
Right. It's not about giving up or being passive. It's about letting go of trying to control everything and realizing that we're part of something much bigger. Like we're all dancing together in this huge cosmic dance.
That's a nice way to think about it. It's like we're all in this together, connected to something way bigger than ourselves.
And that idea of being connected, it really fits with what the author says about using our inner tools to help others, not just ourselves.
Oh, right. So it's not just about our own personal growth. It's about making the world a better place, too.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of personal growth, the author talks about happiness too, like how to find it. They seem to think happiness is something we can create, not just something that happens to us.
So it's not about waiting for happiness to come along. It's about making it happen. But how do we do that?
Well, they talk about things like gratitude and mindfulness, like really paying attention to the good things in your life and remembering happy memories. It's about training your mind to focus on the positive stuff.
So we can actually change our brains to be happier,
Mm.
even when things are hard.
That's what they're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, the author talks about evolution, like how amazing it is that humans have evolved to where we are now.
Yeah, it does make you think, huh, like we're part of this huge chain that goes back billions of years.
It is humbling, and the author wants us to appreciate that, to remember where we came from and live our lives with a sense of awe and gratitude.
So before we wrap things up, what would you say are the most important things for our listener to remember from this deep dive into pure consciousness?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that a good life is about both inner and outer work. Like, you got to take care of your inner world and the outer world. It's about mastering those inner tools. We talked about the rational mind, imagination, intuition, and inner sensitivity. And it's about remembering that we're all connected, all part of something bigger.
That's a great way to put it. So as you continue exploring pure consciousness, think about this. What can you do today to take care of your inner world? Even just a small step.
Because even a small change can make a big difference, right? In your own life and in the world around you.
That's all for this deep dive. See you next time.